Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Great Lakes Ag Labor Services webinar. Today, for those of you that are joining, if this is your first time in Zoom, we will be doing a live Q&A or Q&A with participants later on in the program. And the easiest way for you to do that is to submit your question via the Q&A box. If you're on a laptop, it's going to be on the bottom of your screen. If you're joining from another device, it may be somewhere else on your screen, but we'll be taking questions submitted through that Q&A. We also are recording today's program so that we can share it with other farmers or folks who may be interested in learning more about H2A and our services. So with that, let's get started. My name is Sarah Black, and I am the current general manager for Great Lakes Ag Labor Services. And today's program is really an opportunity to share with you a little bit of an overview of the H2A process and the different models that are out there for farms looking for that type of service. We're going to share with you what we do at Great Lakes Ag, our services, how we help the farms bring the workers and help get them trained and ready. A little bit, we'll cover the filing process with the different state and federal agencies that you have to go through to participate in the program. And then we're also going to hear from one of our current clients. Matt Nilsson has joined us this morning from Golden Plains Farm. And Matt has been working with GLAUS for the last several years, and he's going to share a farmer employer perspective for you to hear about why they work with GLAUS and why they made the decision to go the H2A route. We then are also going to have Kim Clark with Varnum Law join us, and they are a very important partner with GLAUS in this process and have an outstanding agricultural employment compliance guide that comes as a part of our services. And Kim's going to give a little overview of how we work together and also all the great resources that are at your fingertips in that guide. And then we'll finish up with a Q&A. So that's our agenda for today. I just wanted to spend a couple minutes up front to tell you a little bit about who is Great Lakes Ag and how did we get started. We are an affiliate company of the Michigan Farm Bureau, and we're headquartered and share the same office space as the rest of those companies in Lansing, Michigan. And we were started by our farmer members who back in 2015 really had come to a point where they just were struggling finding labor to work on their farms and really felt like Farm Bureau needed to take the step to help farmers understand how to use the H2A program, because it is a very complicated process and you want to make sure you do it right. And there's a lot of steps along the way. And so we were born out of our own members saying we need and want this service. We just completed last year in 2020 our 6th season of H2A services, and we are a little different model, and we're going to talk about the different models later, but we're a full service agent. We're not a farm labor contractor or maybe some of the other different service models are out there, so that's something that's a little bit unique too. In terms of just kind of a quick look at last year in terms of how we did to show you our scope, we did work with 58 farms. Lori, if you want to move ahead, please. We did work with 58 employers last year and filed 86 applications and brought in just under 1,800 workers. So in a very short period of time, we've learned the process, we've learned how to do it well, and have been able to help a lot of our member farms along the way. Another great thing about our business and the way that we are organized is that we are connected nationally via a lot of the different employer groups. As a member of the Council of Ag Employers nationally, we have regular interaction weekly, actually, with other people that do this same service. So we're very connected to what's happening, the most current regulations and laws and things that are necessary to know in the program. As I mentioned when doing the introductions, we do have a very close partnership with Varnum Law that we value highly and that we know our employers feel is a tremendous benefit to our model and the way that we do business. We also developed a custom database, which maybe sounds a little bit granular, but it's really important because it gives us the ability to provide our customers with customized service with respect to everything from their contracts, but in particular, we know with the recruiter that we work with, we are able to know exactly who the workers are, where they're at, where they're crossing. It allows us to be able to provide each farm with customized paperwork. So when the workers arrive, a lot of the things are filled out for you already. It's just a really nice benefit that comes along with our services. And then to wrap up finally our team, we do have a team of 7. The majority of all of those are bilingual, which is really important because that gives us the ability to do a lot of translations, to help you right on the farm in having conversations, to be able to offer some of that worker onboarding in person in Spanish or English. And if you go to the next slide, you can see the list of our team here that's split up and ready to work and serve our Michigan farms. So with that, I want to turn the program over now to Misty DeBoer. Misty is our Assistant Operations Manager. She also serves as one of our labor program coordinators that works directly with our clients. And she's going to give you an overview of the H2A program.
Hello, everyone. As Sarah mentioned, my name is Misty DeBoer. I just wanted to give the overview of the H2A program for some of you who may not be familiar with it. So the H2A program is a temporary agricultural program. It's run by the federal government, and it allows agricultural employers to bring non-immigrant foreign workers into the U.S. to perform agricultural labor. There's a variety of countries that have been approved for the H2A program and where workers can come from. There's a total of 82 countries. We principally have worked with Mexico, Colombia, Jamaica, South Africa, and Guatemala. Some key aspects to the H2A program is that the work has to be temporary and seasonal in nature. So that means generally the workers stay for about 10 months or less, depending on what your farm needs are. We've worked with contracts that are 1 month long all the way up to the full 10 months. We've worked with contracts that are, for harvesting, planting, tractor operation. There's a variety of different ways that we can structure and use H2A labor to get the needs done on your farm. There is a bit of a complex processing for H2A program. It requires a lot of lead time if you're planning on utilizing H2A labor. There's a timeline that we have to follow, that your petition gets submitted to different government agencies. And so usually that lead time we ask for is about 100 days, but the full filing process, we can start at 75 days prior to your start date, which my colleague will go in a little bit further detail regarding that. H2A is an uncapped program. So what that means is that there's no limit in the number of visas that the government will issue, Department of State will issue. As long as the contract has been certified by both the State Workforce Agency and Department of Labor, you're able to bring up the workers you need for to suit the needs of your farm. And the other big component to the H2A program is that it's a supplemental program for labor. It is not a replacement program. So the domestic workforce does take priority, but we know that there's been a chronic labor shortage for many, many years in agriculture, and this is a solution to help supplement that labor. The graph on this slide just shows you kind of the growth in terms of the number of applications received for H2A, and it starts from 2016 to 2020 there. I am missing Q4 for 2020, but you can see that there is a growth, and it just is a nice visual in terms of when the applications are coming through as well. And so we see, people filing as soon as for spring contracts. We work with summer, and then of course later into the season as well for harvest. And then I would like to go over some different types of application models. So the main ones that we work with are a fixed site, a farm labor contractor, and then a joint employer. There's really no right or wrong in terms of application models as long as they're done in compliance. And we work closely with you to determine which one fits your needs. The majority of our clients are fixed site growers, which that just means that they maintain the control of the workforce. You have to pay the filing fees, our agency fees, and then there's a per worker fee. And then you as the farmer would have control over the workforce once the workers are there. You issue payroll, you handle all the management items as well, and you just proceed as normal in your business. A joint employer is a similar model to the fixed site. The only real difference is that they share all of the fixed fees there. And then you file together, so you are also sharing the workers that you're bringing up to the farm. We've seen this model work really great with farms that already have an established partnership, or our family farms, so maybe like a father and a son entity. So that's also another option that's there. The big key here is that there is joint liability there. So you just want to make sure that the partnership that you have is with someone that you can trust and are transparent with. And then the last model is the farm labor contractor. And they also have to go through all of the same processing, the same timelines as a fixed site or a joint employer. But the difference here is that the farm labor contractor is the one who is considered as the employer. They are the ones who maintain control over the workforce. They pay the payroll. They have to deal with all of the rules and regulations, of course, within H2A. And usually if you contract with a farm labor contractor, you, the farmer, will be paying a certain fee or percentage on top of that. But you do not have the direct control over that workforce. And I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Lori Swanson. She's our operations manager, and she's going to go into a little bit more detail about the H2A filing process itself.
Thank you, Misty. This morning, I will be reviewing the necessary steps to become H2A employers. So the H2A filing process does require coordination with several agencies. These agencies include the U.S. Department of Labor, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, the Department of Homeland Security, and the U.S. State Department, as well as foreign governments and consulates. Every Great Lakes Ag employer is assigned a coordinator to help facilitate the filing of necessary applications and also to keep careful records of these documents. The table that you see does show various steps and timelines associated with the filing. The first step is what we call a management review, which is conducted by Varnum Law and is unique to our company. My colleague Eligio will provide further details in the next slide on this prerequisite. So prior to the filing, your coordinator will work with you to draft a contract that's unique to your operation. This is a contract between you and all the workers who engage in the job duties that you decide to list. The contents of the contract do need to meet H2A regulatory requirements and are reviewed in detail by the government agencies. The filing process does begin with the State Workforce Agency between 75 and 60 days before your anticipated date of need. Great Lakes Ag has completed numerous filings, and we've basically become experts in the processing of these applications. So throughout the process, we will be in constant communication with the employer to provide updates and guidance to fulfill the necessary filing requirements along the way. We do try to make this process as simple as possible because we know you all are extremely busy running your day-to-day operations. So the final step of the process is scheduling consulate appointments for workers, and we do partner with several recruiters in various countries depending on your requests and your needs. The employers can provide a list of specific workers that they like to recruit, or they can just rely on the expertise of the recruiting agencies to assign qualified applicants to their farm. After the workers receive their visas, we also coordinate the travel from their country of origin to your worker housing. And again, keep in mind that throughout the entire process, you will be in constant communication with your assigned coordinator for all of this. So this was just a brief overview of the H2A filing process through our services, which are unique to Great Lakes Ag. And next up, Eligio will be providing you all with an overview of our specific services. So Eligio, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Eligio Larrega, and I am the sales and field representative for Great Lakes Ag Labor Services. Usually, I am the first point of contact for growers interested on the H2A program. So a big part of my job is education. And one of my responsibilities is meet with our prospect clients and provide information about the H2A program requirements, our services, and the cost of the program. So the topic I'm going to talk to you is about our services. You heard Sarah, Misty, and Lori talk about a process or processes, and our services are pretty much tied to these processes for the most part. I also would like to mention that a lot of these services are unique to Great Lakes Ag, and there are not a lot of H2A providers who offer the services that we provide. And some of these services are customized to each farm, like you heard my coworkers mention before. So let me start with the first one, the management review. The management review is conducted by a third party, like you heard, and for that process, we use the services of Varnum Law Firm. Once the management review is done, if the grower decides they want to move forward and using the H2A program makes sense, then we move forward into an agreement between the grower and Great Lakes Ag. And I was going to talk a little bit more about the management review, but since Kim from Varnum is here with us today, I'm probably just going to let her talk a little bit more about that. So once we enter into an agreement with the client and sign a contract, we make sure to have enough meetings and as many discussions as necessary with our clients so that they understand the H2A program and the requirements that come with it to have a successful season. For recruitment, we work with different organizations for recruitment the workers. Once we have identified what type of farm you have and what jobs the workers will be doing, we then send the information to the recruiting companies so that they can recruit the right people according to the needs of the farm. We also help you with domestic recruitment. There is a rule about domestic workers that requires you to give preference to domestic workers when these workers apply to the same job that you're offering to your H2A workers. So when the domestic worker applies for the job, we in Great Lakes Ag, we take to the task to provide a job interview and to screen these domestic applicants to make sure that they qualify for the job and that they meet the necessary experience and requirements to work in your farm. We also coordinate the workers' transportation to your farm. When the workers come from Mexico, we usually use a charter company that transport the workers from the consulate to your farm or a nearby town. And when the workers come from a different country, we then, along with the recruiter, we coordinate the inbound and outbound flights. Another service we offer is an onboarding process. When the workers arrive at the farm, they are required to complete and sign several documents just like any other employee you would hire, plus additional documentation that is required by the H2A program. So as part of our services, we provide training and orientation session. We are present at the farm usually for assistance with filing the documents such as I-9s, W-4s, the H2A contract, and other documents. We also explain to the workers how to fill these documents and how to make sure that these documents are filled properly. We also provide training in other areas like worker protection standard. You know, like farms that use pesticides are required to provide this training. We also, the right to know law, which is overseen by OSHA. As an employer, if you have chemicals at the workplace, you have to train the workers on this area. We provide training on food safety if needed. You know, if you're covered under the FISMA law, the workers rule, the workers we train the workers on hand washing and other requirements under the FISMA rule. We talk to them about worker safety to prevent accidents and what to do in case of an accident, you know, and other areas like general rules and responsibilities of the worker. We also provide the workers with the reimbursement from their visa fees and travel expenses. Also, as you all know, due to the COVID-19 pandemic last year, the Michigan governor and the MDHHS issued executive orders and emergency orders. These actions prompt the need to develop a COVID preparedness and response plan. With the help from Varnum, we were able to provide our clients a customizable COVID preparedness and response plan in both English and Spanish. We also make scheduled farm visits. We provide translation services, whether they're written on the farm or over the phone. We provide management materials like discipline booklets. Our staff is in constant training and keeping updated on the new H2A information, labor regulations, and other aspects that require our clients to stay informed, like COVID. And you will also, like Lori mentioned, you will have a dedicated GLALS staffer that will be working with you, an LPC. But also you will have access to a well cross-trained staff team to ensure that there is no lapse in service. So I could go on and on about our services, but for the purpose of keeping this meeting on schedule, I'm just going to stop here and I'm going to introduce our next presenter. So Mr. Matt Nielsen, welcome.
Hi, my name is Matt Nilsson. I work for Golden Plain Farms. We're a joint employer with Cunley Farms. There's two brothers, Jason Cunley and Kurt Cunley, that run two different farms. I'm gonna give you the bottom line up front. Why we go to H2A? To make more money. That's about it. And I'll explain how we did that with H2A. And the reason why we went GLALS is to keep us out of jail. Maybe not so much to keep us out of jail, but definitely to run some of the administrative paperwork to make sure we weren't making big mistakes and get hit with fines and fees. So we see GLALS as helping us reduce our risk from certain errors that the government's going to come in and check up on us. So that's really what we do a lot with GLALS, and we've worked with them. We've been very happy with their service and support. They reduce our risk. They make sure we're not subject to any kind of super audit that's going to hurt us, and we have to pay outrageous fines. Now, getting back to H2A, we grow predominantly bell peppers. We have at Golden Plain Farms 46 H2A employees, predominantly in the harvest field, and Cunley Farms has 30 employees, which they work in the harvest field. We also have a secondary contract for maintenance employees. We have one, ours is from Mexico, and Cunley Farms has one out of South Africa. And if you have any questions about how that works, you can ask me later. Now, how does it save money? How do we make money? Well, we were only able to get a certain size of our workforce. We basically do rows of bell peppers on plastic, and we have 6 rows in each section. And we were covering about 18 sections of picking at a time. We were able to increase our workforce by just 13 people from 2016 to 2017, and that gave us a 29% increase in our production, with only a 9% increase in our labor costs. And basically, most of our work is done with piece rate. But we went from picking 485,000 packages in 2016 to 613,000 packages in 2017. That was a huge increase. And the reason we made money in 2017 was just because of that production increase. And ever since we went to H2A, our production increase 4 of the last 5 years have gone up. Last year was our all-time high of picking. And this is a 60 harvest days in a 3-month period. We picked 671,000 packages. So we find out the H2A workers are more efficient, more effective, and we just get a better product, not as much damage. And we really reduced our costs. We were able to go through fields and picking fields a lot faster. Most of our costs were going out to the trash and waste just because we could get through the field. And that's where you really see a lot of advantages. Now, this year, going into 2021, we are looking to add into the packing house. That is something we've been looking at for a long time, but it was not cost effective. Now, with the increase of unemployment pay that we're going to have to do, we're going to have increase in payroll taxes, all that stuff. We're looking at, okay, where is the break-even point? Right now, we believe we're in the place where we can invest in our infrastructure, more housing, a little bit better transportation to bring on the packing house employees as well. So we're looking to expand both at Cunley Farms and Golden Plain Farms by about 40 to 50 people each. That's kind of the stuff from us. Some things you might have questions about: costs. Some of the additional costs is transportation. Now, one of the advantages we've had with H2A coming out of Mexico is they can actually drive themselves. So we've actually purchased vans, and they kind of use the vans to move from field to field. That's been a cost savings to some degree after the initial cost of investing in the vans. 15 passenger vans keeps us away from some of the requirements, whereas some people are going with buses, and you have to have a permanent bus driver. The other place you'll see some costs that you're not expecting is actually buying some supplies for the individual H2A workers. Blankets, towels, silverware, plates, those type of things are usually an annual cost. Big initial upfront cost, but it decreases over time. So as you'll see, you'll have initial upfront cost, but over the years, that cost gets less and less and less, and you're able to find some good synergies. And as the federal rules change, there might be some other savings moving forward as well. If you have any questions for me, please let me know.
All right. Thank you, Matt. Next up, we have Kim Clark, who's an immigration and ag attorney for Varnum Law. Kim will be presenting on the Agriculture Employment Compliance Guide. So I'm going to go ahead and let her share her screen.
Well, thanks everyone for your time today. You heard Varnum a lot throughout all of this, and we at Varnum appreciate the opportunity to partner with Farm Bureau. And we started back at the beginning with the pilot program and just trying to walk through the steps to get the best program we can for employers, and really understanding how to make this as easy as we possibly can. And the employment guide that you've heard about a lot, and then I'm going to show you now, has really been a place where we can hold all of the information that historically you would have gotten at annual meetings and things like that, and would have been a stack of papers that you put on the corner of your desk. What we did is we partnered together and we built this employment guide, and it's not just for H-2A, it is for all ag employers. But the next nice extra special thing you'll see right here is the Great Lakes Employer Guidebook. And so there's extra materials available for Great Lakes customers who use the H-2A program. So every time you take the next step in the process, all of the resources are there for you, both in a summary content for you to review the outlines, and then in the resources section, all of the templates that you're going to be using and needing through the process are right there for easy download and access. The other thing I want to step back a little bit and look at in this overview is, and Eligio mentioned it a little bit about the updates, and we were right on top of the updates when we were told that we had to have a COVID preparedness and response plan. Ours was first. Ours was out there when the state was still trying to pull things together. The state wanted to look at ours to try to pull theirs together and draft theirs. And that's what you can rely on through us. And that's why we do this as a subscription process. And it's included within your Great Lakes Ag process on the H-2A. But again, it's also available to subscribers outside Great Lakes Ag, just to have all these resources and know you have one source for your updates, and they're going to be timely, and they're going to be practical, and they're going to be direct to you. We also, because people like to have the background of things, you'll see that there's links throughout it to government information. And so it's not just what we say and how we say it and whether we got it wrong or not. We'll give you the backup for you if you want to go in and take a look at the additional resources. So all of the HHS orders are referenced here, the different leave acts that happened within COVID, all of that information, the deep detail is there if you want it. The practical, what do I need to do? What do I need to do now kind of thing is also there. You'll see that we have Indiana here. So we've been expanding out. We plan to expand out more. So if you do have operations in other states, most of ag employment law is federal. And so most of our guide applies across all states. But then when there are issues that are different among the states, we also are taking the opportunity when we get subscribers in those states, or Great Lakes expands to customers in those states, that we'll be doing that customized as well. So again, user-friendly, all the resources are there. The other thing that what this really helps with, and I'll talk more about the management review that Eligio talked about, that's really kind of where you figure it out. You've had some conversations with Eligio, big picture, kind of some of those compliance things that are involved in it, some of the costs that are involved in it. The management review is an intensive 2 to 4 hours together. Seems like a lot of time. We try to make it not boring, but we try to actually talk through your issues and really give you that customized approach as to how am I going to make this work on my farm? Because we could hand you the checklist and you could check things off and submit documents. But we find this conversation is what really takes customers to that next level of really understanding how it's going to work on their farm. And so I'm going to share another screen that shows you what that management review looks like. In here we have management review. It's hard for me to tell. It came up. Okay, great. So we're going to walk through each each step of it is going to be the employer section, like who are you, what do you do, just the basics of what you're trying to accomplish through the H-2A program. We're going to talk about the housing, some of the things that Matt talked about, the housing, the transportation, developing your terms and conditions. And that, as Matt described too, develops over time. We usually see employers will start with some portion of their workforce and it expands out over time as they feel that they can invest and expand into those additional duties as well. And so each of these hot links will take you right back to the guide. And so afterwards, what we'll do is I'll take notes throughout this conversation, and we'll have all the detailed information you need here, plus you have the links back to the guide to give you more resources available. And then at the end, I want to show you the bottom of this. We leave you with next steps. So we don't just say, great, thanks for your time, 2 to 3 hours, where are we going to go? But we actually give you the next steps, both from the employer's perspective and from Great Lakes Ag, where are we going to take this next? And sometimes there are some additional things that you need to talk to some other agencies potentially. So recently we had a management review where they hadn't done the inspection on the housing to know whether they could, how many individuals they could use for H-2A, where they needed to have that conversation. It may be Great Lakes Ag giving you more information on that supply list that Matt was talking about and the details of what you need to pull together for that. It could be you have some workers that are returning workers that you're not sure, are they going to continue to do everything on the farm, or are we going to look at maybe making them into a driver or making them into a supervisor that may not be included within the contract. And so there's all those things that we will summarize for you. We'll give you the end result there, and you can use it to take your next steps on this H-2A path. Go back to the guide here. So all the different topics I just kind of want to highlight again that are down the side, each of those have summaries underneath, and the general resources section is where you can find the resources that are throughout the entire guide. That was the Indiana one. This is the Michigan one. And all the different topics that you may have come across as an employer over the years. Can I treat this particular worker as an independent contractor employee? That came up a lot in the beginning. Everybody wanted to know, is there a way I can get around employee? So there's a discussion about that. There's I-9s, the conversation about how to complete them, what happens section 1, section 2, walks you through, again, every single topic that would be important as you're just looking back over your operations and making sure that you've got all your employment packets in order. And that's sometimes what we'll find in the H-2A management review is, you've got most of the pieces in place, but there were a couple things that just you maybe needed to put a few more things in place. You needed to review, you needed to update. And those are the kinds of things that we'll identify as you go through the management review, and the guide will give you the details on how to go about them. The other thing that I think has been a hallmark of the partnership with Michigan Farm Bureau is that we work in tandem to protect the employers. And what I mean by that is there's a place and time where the conversations turn to a place where you want attorney-client privilege, that they may be questions about whether there's compliance, whether there's not, whether there's an opportunity to be a bit more creative that we don't know whether it falls within the regulations or not. That's where you can have a conversation with me that is attorney-client privileged. And so I can't say anything to any agency. I wouldn't say anything to any agency, but that's something where Great Lakes Ag cannot provide that protection because they are not attorneys. They cannot hear that information and be protected from not having to disclose it out. And so Great Lakes Ag has done a really nice job of building its relationships with clients, providing as much compliance information as possible. Compliance information is everything we have on the guide. It's the rules. It's, look at them. That information's there available for you. But it's that application of the legal rules onto your factual situation. That's where they can't cross over. But they can gather your questions. They can connect you with me, and then we can provide the legal advice that's protected. And you can come direct to me too. That's part of building the relationship in the management review from the first moment, is that you know who I am, you know my phone number, or Christiana Kutu works with me to do these management reviews. So you have a contact that you can pick up the phone and call. We do not charge you for those calls unless we tell you that it's going to move to an engagement situation. So during the first few years of H2A, or certainly during the first year when everything's still new, that's when we tend to get the most calls from new customers. Over time, it tends to be a lot less calls, but that's okay. We want to make sure that this is successful. And if it gets to something, so the difference between a free call and what we'll tell you you need to decide whether to engage us is if you have a situation that you could describe in 15 minutes, we could talk through the different factors and you decide to take a business decision and move forward. That's all included within the guide. If you call me and you already have a worker who's making a claim represented by a lawyer and we're going to need to make some responses to that lawyer, that's engagement. That's something you want to retain me as your attorney so that, again, everything is protected. We represent you instead of you having to, again, if you decide to do this, instead of you having to respond to the attorney on the other side. So that's kind of how this all works together. We don't start charging you until we tell you that, hey, this is an engagement situation where you would need to retain us. This is what we estimate the cost to be. Totally your choice then whether to move forward or not. So that's kind of an overview of how Barnum has worked with Michigan Farm Bureau through development of the H2A program and even outside the H2A program, overall the guide to provide a resource to Michigan employers and now Indiana employers as well.
Kim, thank you very much for that. I think what you just described is really a great overview of how I like to talk to members about. Great Lakes Ag was started to really provide service that can wrap around the farmer because our goal is for that farmer to be successful. And so we really are a different model than many other H2A providers because we weren't started to be a for-profit business. We weren't started to be out there to be a new company that could generate revenue. We were started to serve the farmer. And so our goal really is to, what I like to say, wrap ourselves around the farmer to make sure you're successful. And so requiring that you go through the management review is a lot up front. And what Kim just covered is a lot, but it's a lot because it really helps us both make a good decision about, is your farm ready? And are you ready to take this step? Because we want you to be successful. So with that, we're now at the point where we'd love to take questions. If any of our participants have any questions, you can type them in the chat and we'd be happy to answer them or do our best to answer them. Again, the purpose of today really was just to kind of give you that big picture overview of what H2A is, what's all involved, why Great Lakes Ag is here and how we got started and what our purpose is. And then to show you a few of the services that we offer and maybe how they're different from some of the other providers out there. And if we don't have any questions, then we'll wrap up the webinar. And again, we're recording it and we'll provide it available to maybe those who couldn't log on during this lunch hour for further information. So I think we have a question that has come in. And I'll read it. And then if one of the team members wants to respond, that would be great. Our first question is, Eligio mentioned worker safety training during onboarding. I'm wondering if an H2A worker has an injury while working, what is their access to health care? Michigan AgriAbility has bilingual staff and can do assistive technology evaluations if someone has a medical condition and needs to keep working. Would anybody from our team like to try to answer that question?
Well, one thing is that if they get injured while working, even though they're H2A workers, they're foreign workers, the employer still has to provide workers' compensation. So workers' compensation would be what covers a working injury. I don't know if anyone wants to add a little bit more to that.
This is Matt Nilsson. We've not had too many people get injured on the job. We have had some people who had dental problems and some other stuff like that. We've taken to local clinics and they've paid for it out of pocket for the most part. For some reason, we had 1 year that everybody wanted to go to the dentist and we had no idea why. But generally speaking, it's relatively low. We don't have a lot of people who get injured at the work site. But people do get sick, and we have to take them to local preventive care areas.
So again, the question was, if a worker, an H-2A worker has an injury while working, what is their access to healthcare? And what I'm hearing is there is access. All right. Anyone else have a question? If you do, go ahead and type it into the chat box or into the question box, and we'll do our best to get an answer. All right, at this point, here's a question that just popped up. Do we have to have a housing location picked out before scheduling the on-site review? On-farm housing isn't currently an option for us. Someone want to talk about the housing a little bit more and how to go about that process? So specifically, do we have to have housing picked out before scheduling the on-site review?
I can speak on that, Sarah. So you don't have to have the housing picked out prior to it. We do advise as early as possible and ideally prior to beginning filing around that 75th day, so 75 days before your date of need. We do hope that you have already identified the housing and contacted the Michigan Department of Ag and Rural Development, so your MDARD inspector, to visit the housing, see if there's any issues that need to be addressed prior to certification. So we do ask that that be done by the time that we begin the filing process, but you do not have to have it done or identified prior to that review, which is done in advance.
And then I will add on to part of the processing is when you ask for the number of visas that you're filing for, it is tied to your housing capacity. So if you needed 30 workers, but you only have housing for 15, the maximum that you could request at that time is 15. And so that is something that is looked over by the State Workforce Agency and Department of Labor. Um, Another thing to keep in mind too is once you do have that identified and you have, say you have the 30 workers and you do have housing for 30 workers and that's all fine. You can add housing at the end too, but of course it does have to be inspected, and we'd walk you through that if that was the case. But just know when the filing is the capacity for the housing that you're approved for does relate to how many visas or how many workers you can petition for.
Thanks, Misty and Lori. I did see that Kim also posted in the chat for those of you on the line that there is a link in the employment guide regarding housing for more information as well.
And I have one more thing I'd like to add. It just came to my head. We do have growers too that if you don't have housing, they have sometimes rented from neighboring farms or even rented out housing from like a motel or a hotel. So those are just things to keep in mind as you're thinking through what housing you're able to provide and what you have access to.
Hopefully that answered your question. Are there any other questions out there or any other questions related to housing as a follow-up? While we wait for other questions to come in, back on the question about injured workers and access to healthcare, Matt has posted in the chat that in Southwest Michigan, we have Intercare Community Health Network, which is a low-cost alternative healthcare, and a lot of times this is where workers will go for their health needs. Thanks, Matt, for sharing that. All right, any other questions about anything we've covered today or for any of these experts that are on the webinar right now? I did want to make one more plug as we wait to see if there are other questions that come in for the Varnum Agricultural Employment Guide. As you heard discussed during the webinar, it is a tremendous resource. And I know in my conversations over the years with farmers, sometimes they think of it as just H-2A related, but it isn't. It's really a very broad-based ag employment guide that's accessible and usable for any farmer that has any type of employee. So it's not just H2A stuff. It has so many wonderful resources right at your tips that, as Kim mentioned, are always updated real time. You can always find the most recent and current information there. And it's just nice to have that peace of mind that you've got that at your fingertips anytime you need it. Okay, one last call for questions before we close up the seminar today. If not, I'd like to thank all those that logged on to participate. Hope you learned a little bit today about H2A. Hope you learned a little bit about Michigan Farm Bureau's newest affiliate company, Great Lakes Ag Labor, and who we are. I'd like to especially thank our guest today, Matt Nilsson, who hopped on to help give that farmer and employer perspective. Matt, we appreciate your comments and your time today. And also Kim Clark from Varnum Law, one of our trusted partners that we rely on very heavily. Kim, we appreciate your time today and your partnership in this process. Thanks everyone for joining. Like I said, we've recorded this and we'll be posting the link if you want to watch it again or want to share it with a family member or somebody that couldn't hop on. Thanks everyone. Have a great day.